Hello, my name is Sean Chrysler, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Residence Life and Housing. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I want to thank you for taking time for watching this webinar video on Residence Life and Housing Move-In Overview. Let's go ahead and begin. In this presentation, we will cover a few topics as they relate to move-in dates and times, move-in sign-up, directions, holding lot and stations, unloading process, parents, family, and guest registration, what happens after move-in. Then towards the end, I'll address some miscellaneous questions, a little bit about our contact information, and the Live Where You Learn book. For move-in times and dates, so first year and transfer students will move in first, August 14th through the 16th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so new students and first year transfers, if you will, have the opportunity to register for move-in slots that will begin or have begun on Monday, August 3rd from 9 a.m. through Wednesday, August 12th, which is this week at 4 p.m. Returning students come about a week later and move in August 20th through the 23rd, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Returning student registration for move-in time slots opened Monday, August 10th at 9 a.m. and run through Tuesday, August 18th at 4 p.m. Move-in times are not necessarily broken up by hall or year, but they are broken up by first year and transfer students or students new to Oswego, and then returning students. In terms of arrival, you want to aim for, when you select your move-in time, you will select a 60-minute window. And when you aim to arrive, we want you to aim for the top of that move-in time. And so if you select 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., then you're aiming to arrive close to 9 a.m. For those who arrive a little early, again, we'll begin to work you in the queue because you're aiming for your arrival time of 9 a.m., for example, if that's the time you selected. As we get closer to the end of the move-in process, our last slot to be selected is 6 p.m. And so again, we want you aiming for the top of that time. Now, in this process, we also realize that there will be traffic and other delays that can play a part in your arrival. So you may have selected a 9 a.m. time, but with traffic delays and other things, you might not get in until 11 a.m. And so as you come, and I'll talk a little bit about this, about the stations that we have set up, let us know your time of arrival if you find yourself late beyond that time, and then we'll still work to be able to get you in the queue. But please aim for your time that you selected. That has a big role in how we've set up the move-in process. This is our contact information. We're in 303 Colkin Hall. This is our email address and our phone number. Now, the week of August 10th and the week of August 17th will be open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m., but we've extended our hours each night or each evening from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So the week of August 10th and the week of August 17th, the office will be open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. to address questions. On August 15th and 16th and August 22nd and 23rd, which are Saturday and Sunday of those weeks I just called out, our office will also be open just in case you run into an issue or you need to give us a call so we can work through some pieces. We are a little busy, so please be patient with us as we work to respond to a number of requests, questions, and concerns. Back to move-in dates and times. So to sign up for a move-in date and time, I want to make a few things clear. So one, we will not give you or issue you a move-in date and time. You have to sign up for a move-in date and time. And so to do that, you can go here and you can follow these steps. You would go to myhousing.oswego.edu. You're going to log in with your LakerNet ID and password. You should already have those credentials. And then you're going to scroll down to where it says room assignments. And then you'll see new student check-in, or you'll see returning student check-in. You'll select the move-in day and time. Now, at this point, only students can only sign up for the days and times based on their status. So first year and transfer students have an opportunity to sign up for their times, and returning students have an opportunity to sign up for their times. And so even though they're two different move-in days and times for those sets of students, part of that is part of our density plan to separate returning students and new students, keep the population density low on campus, but also to ensure that everyone is not competing for the same move-in times. Speak with your family before you select a day and time. These are hard for us to change. We've already gotten a few requests to make these changes. It's not easy. So the time you select, please make sure that you're only going in to select the time once. Once you select a day and time, it's displayed in a portal, and that's your time. There is somewhat of a glitch in the system where you'll select your day and time, you'll update that, and then if you hover over that time, it will look as though you can move that time. But once you update that time, you select that time, that's actually the time, so you can write it down and you'll have it confirmed as well. We also will be sending additional information to your oswego.edu as it becomes closer to moving with directions and additional information. So this is what you will see when you log into the My Housing to select your move-in time. You'll again LinkedIn and password, and on the right is just an example of a profile that you'll see. And again, on the bottom is where you would select your move-in time. The question I typically get at this point is how many students will be on campus at any given time? Well, what we've tried to do is break the campus in, or what we've done is break the campus into parts where we're really trying to move in maybe about 25 to 30 students per residence hall. And so that again allows us to keep the density low on campus and within each residence hall. The other second question I will sometimes get is Sean, should roommates move in at the same time? So roommates should one reach out to each other, if not only just to begin to establish that relationship, but two, you should check in to get a sense of when you're moving in. What we've asked is that roommates try their best to select different times. If you find that you have the same time as a roommate, as we're moving you through the queue, let us know and we'll check. We'll also be checking because we prefer that you have different points to move in, just provides a little bit more space in the room as we work to keep everyone safe. Let's talk a little bit about directions. So when you work to enter the campus, I wanted to kind of focus on for this part uh, how you would come into the campus. Typically, the question here is Sean, how do we get to the campus? What if I get lost? So the way this system is set up is to avoid that and avoid you getting lost. So I want to start a little bit with the main entrance. The main entrance will serve as the primary entrance for those looking to move into the village, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Hart Hall. So village, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Hart Hall. So these students would enter from Route 104 and they take a right on Sweet Road. And so if you look at my cursor, this is 104 here. This is a right on Sweet Road. Here, this purple dot just represents our team, which will greet you, welcome you, and they're going to do a few things. They're going to verify your move-in time. They're going to ensure that you have a face covering. They're going to verify your residence hall, and then they're going to send you to a holding lot and provide you a car tag, which will indicate which residence hall and provide a color. So when you get to the holding lot, we can see it from a distance. Again, at this point, for those of you who come maybe early or too early, we'll have you wait in a holding lot until we can get you closer to your assigned time. If for some reason we can move you into the queue sooner, we can, but don't bet on that. We have a number of students moving in, and we've really designed the time for students to arrive at their designated, at the top of their designated time slot. For those who come late, we will also do the same thing. We will work you into the queue. This is just a Google Maps shot of how you might be entering campus. So this is 104 passing. This is 104 passing Kenny Drugs and passing McDonald's. You'll notice this continues to 104. But for those of you who need to enter campus via Washington Boulevard, you'll actually keep going past 104, past McDonald's, and you keep going. You're going to pass a car wash, and you're going to be on Washington Boulevard at this point, passing 6th Avenue, coming up on Washington Boulevard. Now, for those who would take this route, that would be those moving into Sheldon, Johnson, Riggs, Waterbury, or Scales. Again, if you're coming to move into Sheldon, Johnson, Riggs, Waterbury, or Scales, you would take the 104 right on to Washington Boulevard. And what will happen here is from Washington Boulevard, we will work with you to join the queue. Here you will be greeted by our team. At this point, again, we're going to verify your move-in time, ensure you have a face covering, verify your residence hall, provide you with a car tag, and really ensure that you get to the right space. Again, this is just another view for you when you're coming in again on Washington Boulevard. Here is Sheldon, Johnson, Riggs, Waterbury, and Scales, and we're going to direct that traffic toward those halls. And as you can see, Johnson, Riggs, Waterbury, and Scales are on this side of the map, closest to Lake Ontario. In terms of our campus address, if you need to put this in your map for your directions here, this is the address that you want to use: SUNY Oswego, 760 State Road, Route 104. And so this will get you to campus. And again, we want you to take the Washington Boulevard route for those halls that I stated, and the main entrance for the halls that I stated. But again, if you get lost, we will still get you to the right place. So I want to shift gears here and begin to talk about the holding lots and the stations. So holding lots. So once you get past the welcome checkpoints, we're going to send you to a holding lot. And I want to talk a little bit about this process. So once you are in a holding lot, which is basically a parking lot, you can remain in your vehicle. Most of the check-in process of us moving you in is you remaining in your vehicle. So we'll direct you to a designated parking spot, and then we'll direct you through the check-in process, and you will drive through the stations. So in a minute, I'm going to talk about the testing station, stations 1 through 4, and then the unloading area. When we think about this, some of the questions I would get at this point of the presentation is things like, Sean, how will you maintain social distancing through this process? What does that look like? So in terms of maintaining social distance through the holding lot process, there are a few things that have happened that are happening. So when I began, I talked a little bit about the campus being separated. So we've kind of separated the campus in east and west. We're having you stay in your car again, so there's distance there, and we'll be keeping our distance from you. But again, keeping families and guests in their car. We've made the process where there aren't a lot of pieces being exchanged hand to hand. A lot of things that we will give you, if we can, we will put them in the room, or we will be sharing them with you for you to have and take pictures of for later. Also, even with our move-in crew, so we'll have move-in crew, we'll all be wearing our masks, they'll be wearing their masks, they'll also be using gloves, and I'll talk about carts and bins and what that looks like a little bit. Uh, the second question I sometimes get here is Sean, how will we keep the social distance process as it relates to elevator usage? And so we have designated elevators in each of the buildings, with the exception of the village. And so, in terms of elevator use, for the purposes of this process, move-in crew will use the elevators in the halls to move the carts up, and students belong up. And so we'll have a designated set of elevators for a move-in crew. They'll be managing those elevators. And then we have a separate elevator for students, parents, and visitors and guests. And so we're only allowing so many people on those elevators at a time, and those elevators are broken down to particular floors. For those who are able, in some cases, it probably will be best to use the stairs for some of those lower floors. A number of our buildings only have 3 or 4 floors, and so for our taller buildings, if your student is staying on some of those lower floors, we might direct you to take the stairs just to make it a little quicker for those who are able. For those who are not able, of course, the elevator will be in use. Another question, can you bring your own cart or dolly? You sure can. You can bring your own cart or dolly to assist with the moving process. And when we talk about the unloading process, I'll get to how you bring your own cart and dolly plays into this. Okay. And there are other questions that I've worked to answer in some of the other webinars that I'll address later. So just in case you're thinking if it'll come up, some of those questions are: how soon after move in can students stay in the residence halls? Will dining halls be open? Can family members assist students with the move-in process? Will family members be able to enter the residence hall and help? And if your student is bringing their own car, uh, what is that process? How does that process come together? So these are just some of the questions that I'll be talking about as we move into the unloading area. So for now, I want to talk a little bit about the stations, but those questions will be answered shortly. Okay, so let's jump to the testing station. So the testing station is one of the first stations that a student will encounter. So I just want to provide some context as it relates to the testing station with a few frequently asked questions. What kind of test? So the testing station is a coronavirus test, and it's testing for the students. So all students that will be coming to campus this year will be tested. So it's not a fever test, and it's not a test for your parents. This test is only for students. And so the test is basically a saliva test. And so students will be getting that, receiving that test. They open it, they provide a sample, they close it back up, and they place it in a bin where it will be tested. How soon will the results be available? I answered the third question: will my parent be tested? Who will manage the testing? So we have volunteers who will be managing the testing, professional volunteers. And when do we receive the results? So these questions, it's my understanding that the testing period will move pretty fast, and also the results will also be given fairly soon. But a lot of this information students will find out at the testing station, and so more details to come when you arrive. One of the important pieces to remember with testing is that regardless of what time you come in, you don't want to eat, I would say, maybe an hour before that test. So think about this. If you're coming in, you have a 9 a.m. slot, that testing piece is going to be at the very beginning of move in. And so if you've eaten breakfast, you've eaten it earlier, do your best to eat it before 8, so you make it through that an hour before, or I should say 30 to 45 minutes, but hour to be safe before you test it. So again, no food or drink an hour before your move-in time, because the first thing you're going to be doing is doing the test at our testing station. Okay, so just remember that you're not eating an hour before your move-in time, because again, the first thing you're going to do is the testing station. So no food or drink before then. Okay, so let's move on to some of the other questions and other parts of the presentation. So in terms of the stations, I won't go through all the details, but I do want to indicate, as you look below, you see the red car moving down this arrow path. And again, that's just to demonstrate that you will be in your vehicle as you drive through these stations. We will issue the student ID and other moving information, and that's the purpose of these stations, just to give you a sense of where you're going, what you're doing, and to make sure that you have all of the information that you need. Okay, let's get to the unloading piece. But the other piece I don't want to forget, actually, while I'm on the stations, is so again, the purpose of these stations is to give you this information. But when you get into your residence hall, one of the things that you'll notice is that we won't give you your residence hall key, room code, or mailbox code or keys in these stations. You'll actually receive that, and it's not on here. You'll actually receive that when you get into the residence hall. That'll be one of the first things that you do, is to get your keys and your codes. So next we'll talk about the unloading process. So for the unloading process, how this will work, and this is where I'll begin to answer questions about family guests and how this piece happens. So we will have you park either in the front or in an area near the residence hall. You and your family can unload the car into one of our gray bins. There's one cart per car, or I should say one cart per student. And so if you're moving in, and for some reason you have two cars, you still get the one bin that we'll be using to move you in. It just means that we'll have to make some you'll have to make multiple trips. Move-in crew members will assist you to your floor. Our move-in crew is our student volunteers. They'll be wearing their PPE. They'll also be wearing gloves. And we want to keep the control of the bins to the move-in crew, because again, this just keeps the contact rate down to those who are wearing gloves and moving in. We also work to disinfect those bins between the use for the students that we're moving in. The move-in crew will take the cart to your room while you follow with additional items. So at this point, it is at this point when you're getting out of the car, the family is getting out of the car, in the unloading process, and helping the student move in to put those things in the bins or get that cart and dolly ready. So when you think about this, the move-in crew is there, everyone is out of the car. The move-in crew will not touch or carry your items. So the moving crew is not there to touch and carry your items. The moving crew is really there to assist with the bin. So they'll be ready with the bin. Family, guests, friends step out of the vehicle. They load the cart. The moving crew, again, they have their gloves and their PPE, and they are pushing the cart to the room to make it easier for you. The student at this point is taking the dolly or the cart or carrying the things that they have, and they're going into the residence hall with the moving cart. They're getting their key, they're getting their code and their information, and the cart, the moving crew, and the student are heading to the room. And you're probably thinking, well, at this point, where is the family? So the family is still with the vehicle. There are probably other items that we need to remove from the vehicle. And so the family is still with the vehicle at this time. They haven't entered the residence hall. All family at this point will still be with the vehicle. And I'll share a few more details as we go. So if a student needs to make a second trip, they can come back, fill it in again. It might take 2 trips. When the car is empty, we'll ask you and your family to park in the designated lot. So let's get into some frequently asked questions as it relates to the unloading of the car. So how will social distancing be maintained? I talked a little bit about that in the beginning. For elevator usage, we've broken the elevators down where the move-in crew will be using the elevators, and we also have elevators designated for parents and students to use as well. What we've done is we've separated those elevators, and so one elevator will go to a particular floor. In buildings where there are only 3 or 4 floors, then that elevator will go up and down. And again, we'll encourage those who are able to use the stairs in those buildings where there are only a few floors, or if your student is on the lower floor, just to make the process faster for you. But again, there is elevator usage. We talked about if you can bring your own carts and dollies. The answer to that is yes. Can family members assist students with the moving in? So for the purposes of this move in, this will be different. I know those who are either returning or have moved other students in through other move-in process pieces. This will be different because you might be thinking that I'm going to grab all my students' things. We're going to be at the room, and I'm going to be setting up the room, making the bed, and stocking the refrigerator. And this process in the pandemic is very different. And so we all have to make some changes as we move in your student into the residence hall. And so family members can assist, but that assistance really takes place in the unloading process. This is where family is there, they're involved, everyone is excited. It's all happening outside in the open space where families are helping in this process. And so that's really where it begins. Will family be able to enter the hall to help? Yes, family will be able to enter the hall. I'm going to talk about that process in the next few slides. So that's coming up. But again, I just want to change the narrative in a little bit for some parents who have moved students in before, and this is not your first move in. And for those who are dropping off first year transfer students for the first time, that move-in process is really the assistance is really taking place in the unloading area. Well, Sean, what if we have 2 cars? If you have 2 cars, we're going to work to keep it together. But again, you still get a cart per student, and it's okay if you have 2 cars. How long does it take to move into the residence hall? So we've allotted that hour spot, and we're going to work to get you in through those stations into the move-in process. But the move-in process in itself, in terms of getting you from car to your room, can it also a variable is how much you bring. And so if you're bringing 2 cars and they're packed full, it could be a bit. But I would say typically to get you to those stations and to get you to your residence hall, we're talking anywhere from an hour to 2 hours to get you through all of the steps in this process. Okay, so let's continue. How many people can help move in is another question that comes up. And so again, if you have 3 people with you, 4 people with you, they can help you move in. But again, we have to change the narrative. That is not the 4 people who came with you and the student, the 5 of you heading into the residence hall. Because if we have 30 students moving in at any given hall per hour, if they all bring 3 or 4 guests to help them move in, then you can imagine it raises the density, and it impedes our ability to bring in other students and parents, because we're trying to keep our density at a certain point in terms of the amount of students on campus the amount of students in the residence hall, the amount of students per floor, and of course, who's all in the room together. And so again, for this density purposes, how many people can help you move in? You can have multiple people help you move in, but all of that is taking place in the loading process because again, we have move-in crew who will assist you. Will cars be available to assist students who are moving in without parental assistance? The answer to that is yes. Can family come into the building? The answer to that is yes, and I'll talk about that in the section I outline in the agenda called Parents, Family, and Guest Registration, which will be up next. And will there be access to an elevator? The answer is yes, with the exception of the village at this point. Parents, family, and guest registration. So students can bring in two parents, two family members, two guests into the hall. Students will escort those visitors from their designated parking lot and walk them to the front desk of their residence hall for registration. Now, uh, at the end of that unloading process, once that vehicle is empty, so if we just step back to that, the family members or the guests that you have in those vehicles, we're going to send you to a designated parking lot where you will wait there. So that's the designated parking lot. We'll send you there. We'll make sure you get there. So at this point, the student has come down to get you. They've grabbed, even if they've grabbed the two family members or the two parents, and so then those guests will need to provide their name, their phone, or their email at that registration piece. It does not require necessarily an ID. We won't be taking your ID, but you will need to provide that information just for the purposes of contract tracing, if that needs to be the case later on. Once in the building, guests are free to use the bathroom, look around the residence halls, the laundry room. We definitely welcome you into this new space, but we only allow 30 minutes for this visitation. And so as we're looking at this, we're only allowing 30 minutes for this visitation. You did hear that correctly. And so the question I would typically get is, Sean, why only 30 minutes? I need more time. It's just not enough time. And so I'm gonna as well address that is again, we're talking about the density piece. I've spoken to parents who've indicated that they feel like they need 2 hours or 3 hours to do everything they would normally do when their student was at home, whether that was to make the bed, hang their clothes, get the TV set up. And so one of the things that we would encourage you to do is start to have those conversations with your student before they arrive, even when you pack. Packing those items so when a student gets up there, they can begin that process. But you won't be able to do all of that in the 30 minutes that you have. And part of that again is for density. And so again, if we have students in a room and they each have two guests, it means that we are also restricting the additional parents and additional students that can move in at that time. And this density is a key piece in how we're trying to keeping the density low is a key piece on how we're trying to keep everyone safe. Once you've reached the 30-minute mark is near, we ask that you begin to proceed to the front desk and sign out, and we'll have you proceed to your car. So again, back to the frequently asked questions for parents, family, guests, and registration. So let's continue this conversation. So how many family members, guests, or visitors will be allowed to accompany student when they move in? So again, in this process, three, four, or five, if you will, who are coming to help you move in, can do that, and they would all assist and play that part in the unloading area outside of the residence hall. And so again, even if you bring four guests, there is no system where we are rotating guests, and so there's only two guests per student, only two guests per student. And so if you bring four people with you, there is no situation where we're rotating guests. There's only two guests per student. So Question 2, what will be the restrictions on visiting our students during the semester? So what will be the restriction? So during the semester, you can still come to campus, of course, you can still visit, but visitors and guests within the residence halls has been restricted. So this means if you come to visit, that student would be meeting you at the front door and exiting the residence hall. And so at this point, there is no time when parents, guests, or family members are entering back into the residence hall at any other point throughout the semester, and so that has been restricted. Just so again, we are keeping that population to students on campus, so you can visit, you can meet that student outside, and you can still go to dinner and do the things that you need to do. How accessible will the move in be for family members that identifies as disabled? So when if you have a family member that needs additional assistance, as we talked about in that unloading process, you'll be fairly close to the residence hall. And so if they need to get to the hall, we will provide a way for them to make it to the hall. Again, you'll be fairly close. And again, we talked about the elevator usage. There are also ramps attached to the residence halls as well. So family members who maybe need a wheelchair can use those ramps as well. I talked a little bit about how many family members can come with you. Again, there is no set number, but again, this is where you have to think about it. That there are only 2 visitors per student. And I know what you're probably thinking, that I have 4 people coming with me. I have my parents and maybe 2 other guests. And you're going to have to make the selection of which 2 guests you're going to show. There was one family who shared that when they got to the residence hall, they were going to be the other 2 family members were going to stay down and to share their experience. They were going to do a Facebook Live where they walked through the residence hall so those other family members could see that. And I know it's not necessarily the same as being there, but as we look to make these changes in the midst of a pandemic, we want to be creative, but we also want to make sure that we're doing our best to ensure your safety. Can students visit other residence halls? So at this point in the initial move in and initial weeks, students will not be visiting other residents in residence halls. So again, until we get to the pods, and that is more information to come on that, but I will talk about that a little bit towards the end. Students will not be visiting students in other residence halls. That doesn't mean students can't visit students. And so if I live in, for example, Onondaga, and a friend of mine lives in Seneca, it means that I can go meet them at the front door or right outside that residence hall and visit them and be outside in that visitation, but it would not be in the residence halls at this time. Again, why do we only have 30 minutes to visit? That's just enough time. And I've gotten that from some parents. And again, I do want to say that our goal is to keep that density down. And we realize that is not easy to do. You're dropping off precious cargo, right? And for some of you all, this is your first time dropping off your student. And so we won't even pretend that this is easy, but it is the time that we have. Of course, we're going to work with you. We realize that 30 minutes is tight, and we're going to be working with you to do that. But again, it is 30 minutes, and so think about that and plan accordingly. And you're right, it's not enough time to fully move in the student, and so but it is enough time for you to visit, begin to get them settled, and allow them to finish that process. Some of the questions that typically come up here and Sean, my student needs help setting up their TV. And so that, so again, that might be the part that you focus on in that 30 minutes of pulling it out the box, even before you get to campus, to set it up, put it back in the box. And then, again, when you come to campus, be able to pull that out. Same thing with Wi-Fi, internet. My student might need help setting up Wi-Fi and the internet. Well, we have our information from our CTS team, where students can follow those steps and get connected. The next question I would typically get here is Sean. And I'll talk a little bit about this at the end. Sean, my student needs help raising that bed a little higher, and so the beds are set at a default setting, and all of them are already raised in most of the halls to accompany the dresser that goes underneath. So these are just some of the things that we're not trying to take away in that 30 minutes, but you might make the decision to use some of that time to do one or two of those functions quickly, because again, the goal is to give you opportunity to see the space for those who haven't seen it before. After move-in. So let's talk a little bit about what happens after move-in. Here's some of the frequently asked questions that parents and guests have asked about what happens after move-in. First question, can we take our students out to shop, eat, or bank, etc.? Yes, you can. So after they have moved in and you've been moved to the designated lot and a student has come back to get you, two things can happen here. So option one, the student may come down, meet you at the designated lot, and you all may just go. You may go shop, you may eat, you may bank, you may go get ice cream, you may take a walk around the campus, and then decide after all that you're going to use that 30 minutes to come into the residence hall. So that would be option A. Option B is you may decide once the student is moved in and you've moved to that designated parking lot that your student comes down, you come up, you do your 30-minute time slot in a residence hall, and then you go out to shop, to eat, to bank, to take a tour around campus, to get some ice cream, to see Lake Ontario. So those are two different options that you might decide to take. Will students be able to leave with parents after move in to get any supplies or have a last meal? They will be able to. We encourage it. We think it's important. Spend the time that you need to get your students settled. And again, that can be done outside of the hall. What happens after move in and the parents leave? Well, after move in and parents leave, if we're talking about first year and transfer students, there is organized virtual events and things that will be happening outside, and there are more details to come in terms of that. Option four, or question four, is there a curfew? And so there is no curfew, and so you can bring them back anytime in this process. Again, continuing with frequently asked questions, what happens after move in? Where will we wait? So once the student is in the building and the car is empty, we will send you to a designated lot. That designated lot will be close to the residence hall. And again, your student can come to that lot and meet you there. Question six, I've answered, but I want to answer in a different way. Will we be able to spend some time with our students after they move? Yes, and again, that can happen in a few ways. You can still have the 30-minute time in a residence hall, and that might just be for you to selfishly look around and get a sense of the space. But you don't have to leave campus right after the student moves in. You can stay in that designated lot. You can park in that designated lot, look around campus, and come back. And so we're not kicking you off campus. We're just restricting the time that you have in a residence hall, because the more we can keep the density down, the more we can continue with the other parents who haven't been into the halls, and the other students that also need to move in. Uh, Question 8, are we allowed back into the residence hall that weekend? So you are allowed back to the residence hall, but not back in the residence hall. So that 30-minute window lives within the day, that your student moves in. The 30-minute window only exists in the day in which your student moves in. So you are allowed to come back that weekend. And now what you'll have to be conscious of is that we'll still be moving in all the way from Friday to Sunday. So as you come in, you'll have to let us know, hey, I'm just going to pick up my son or daughter. We'll get you to that lot. We'll get you to a specific holding spot, and then we would go from there. Can you see students before you leave the next day? You sure can. You would come to the residence hall, or they would meet you at a designated spot on campus, and you can see them. Again, it's just not in the residence hall, but they can meet you outside of the hall. And again, you can walk around and explore campus. This will be really important. At this present time, the questions that I typically get is Sean, I want to buy some swag for family and friends. Will the bookstore be open? And so more details to come when you come. I'll be working to get some of that information. Also know that some of that information is posted on the Oswego Forward page, where we have a whole section on frequently asked questions that if you haven't looked at, you should take a look. Let's begin to wrap up and get into miscellaneous questions. Will bed lofting be available by request? So this year, bed lofting is not available. It had been available before, but that program is on hiatus this year as we work to manage density in the halls and the staffing that it takes to loft that bed. And so at this point, the bed loft, you cannot have your bed lofted at this point. Will you make room changes? So at this point, we are not making room changes. At times behind the scenes, sometimes we see the need where we have to combine rooms, or students are still filling out their registration form. And so we're making space for those students. But we are not making room changes at this time because we're trying to get students in, and we're trying to work through that process. If for some reason there is thoughts that the room needs to change, I ask that you be patient with us. We are working through our spaces, and we don't have a lot of open spaces, and so you can still reach us. I provided that contact information and explain why that change will need to happen. But again, we're not making room changes. How would the remote room check-in work for those living in the village? And so for those living in the village, you're still going through the stations. Well, but the difference is for the village is you will be leaving that those stations, and when we send you to the village for those students who are returning, you will see that staff right in the opening of the village, and they will begin to get you to where you need to know for that information. So that's how that process will work. How much is it to rent a mini fridge from the college? And so the mini fridges that we offer are 3.1 cubic feet. They come at 55 per semester, or $100 for the academic year. If you bring your own mini fridge, then it shouldn't be any more than 2.0 amps, and it shouldn't exceed 6 cubic feet. And so that the order to rent the mini fridge from us, that can actually be found on our page where it lists forms, and you'll go to the left side, you'll click forms, and you'll see the registration page for the mini fridges. Do I need a printer? So you don't necessarily need to have a printer. So we do have printers in each of our residence halls. Typically, they're located at the desk. You would swipe your ID, and then you would be able to print your job. So you don't necessarily need a printer. We have printers on campus. Next question, question 6, can we use the kitchens to cook? So at this point, we're still working through that piece. Kitchens are microwaves, are high contact area. And so at this point, we still have the kitchens closed. The front desks aren't renting out kitchen equipment, if you will, at this time. We're coming back to that. But again, the kitchens are not open at this point. Will the fitness centers be open? So again, still working on the fitness center, still waiting to be approved for that piece. But the fitness center is looking at virtual programming, and so there's still an opportunity to have that wellness component. But more details to come. Will we be able to receive packages on move-in day? So on move-in day, we will not be distributing packages because we're going to be busy greeting you, handing in your keys, and managing the guest and visitor registration process. So on moving day, you won't be able to receive your package until that process is done. Mail takes a little bit just because of how we're trying to work through some of the process pieces of handling mail and other items carefully. So be patient, and then we'll let you know when mail is in. You'll actually be able to come to the front desk, and we'll let you know when mail is ready for pickup. The question I typically get here is again, can I ship things to the residence hall? The answer is yes, but you want to ship them, either close to or after your move-in date. This is something that you want to focus on it closely in. Okay, continuing with miscellaneous questions. Will dining be open when you move in? So towards the evening, that your residence hall will, or the dining centers will be open for move in, and you'll receive more information on that when you move in. I just want to remind you again, going back to the testing piece, is that when it comes to eating, you're not eating an hour before your move-in slot, because that's when the test will begin. But more information when you come on your dining hall and dining center. Will there be a floor meeting after move in? So again, the residential staff will have information on how they will hold those floor meetings and that time. Typically, when students go out and about and they're on their halls, they will see signs about information for those virtual floor meetings and how we'll be conducting those floor meetings, whether they're virtual or they're outside with the use of social distance. So take a look around your hall when you move in, and your RA will have more information as relates to your floor meeting, because you still have time to go out and about before you need to attend. Will beds be set at a default height? So beds are set at a default height, and there's enough room for a dresser to fit. But typically, the bed off the ground is a little. I want to say it's almost 3 feet, and as it sits over the dresser. So there is a default height for the beds, but the beds also can be lowered and higher, lowered or made to be higher. The connections or hooks in the bed frame could easily be pulled up and adjusted if you need to make that a little higher. The question typically that I get that's not on here is about closet space. And so I'm going to direct you to our website where you can see the actual layouts. And I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but I don't want to forget to address, for those of you who have storage bins and totes, there is enough room to slide those storage bins, those suitcases right under the bed. And you can also have enough space to put them in your closet. But I probably would suggest that if you're using longer totes, the flat longer ones, then those can slide under the bed, and the other totes that might be only say maybe 2 feet wide, might be the ones that fit in the closet. And so just some thoughts about luggage, and there is room to store those items under the bed. Which buildings have elevators? So all of our buildings have elevators, with the exception of the Village, with the exception of Lowness and Moreland. And so when you move in, we will have elevators for you to use, and we will be using them for students in the move-in process. How many refrigerators and TVs are allowed in each room? So each student can have their own TV in the room. Sometimes they decide to share a refrigerator. Sometimes they decide to get their own. So that is okay as well. If I move in on the 15th, when will my meal plan begin? And so your meal plan will begin on that day of move in, and there'll be more information for you to receive as it relates to that. Will residents have access to the kitchen and other parts of the residence hall? So yes, you will have access to other parts of the residence hall, but as I kind of stated before, the kitchen is closed at this point, but you are able to go through your hall. And that's another thing. So I talked about guests, and again, when you arrive on campus, students are not allowed at this point to visit other residence halls, but you can go through your own residence hall. So you will be making friends, you will be seeing your peers throughout the building as well. So you can move throughout your building. This is our contact information. I just wanted to show that again. And just again, a reminder, the week of August 10th through the 17th will be open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. to address questions. And August 15th to the 16th, August 22nd to the 23rd, Saturday and Sunday, our office will also be open. And you can call us, and we can work with you. At this point, calling us is best. In terms of these days, just because of our ability to see those face to face, give us a call, and we can support you that way. So as we begin to kind of close out, I just wanted to point you to some additional resources, prohibited items, and what to bring to campus. So if you check our website, you will see this Live and Learn book. It's a loadable PDF, and I think it's a great document. If you haven't read it, take a look. It talks about everything from when we began to heat the residence halls to the weather in Oswego. So don't get too comfortable, and all those things in between as relates to our rules and our expectations and outlined in there, as well as room layouts. And also on our website, there are a few building tours that you can take a look at to get a sense of your room and space. Again, this is your new home. We want you to be welcome, and we want you to be comfortable. The last piece I want to end with is just a little note about pods. I've gotten a few questions and even some concerns about the about pods, and those concerns have only related to Sean. When will we receive more information? And so I just want to let you know that information will come out when students get closer to arriving to campus, and when students make it to campus. One of the things that we didn't want to do, particularly for first year students and transfer students, is we didn't want you to feel as if you needed to form a pod before you even arrived, having more questions, or not even having a friend group established. So again, we will send information out about pods probably somewhere around the second or third week of school. We want to give you time to make friends within your residence hall, to make connections at the dining center, and make connections outside when you see students. So more information to come. With that, I just want to thank you. This presentation has been designed to answer some of your questions, and hopefully it helps you get the sense and the security that you need to come to SUNY Oswego. As you see in the background, this is a picture of our beautiful snow-covered campus. And again, just want to say thank you. We welcome you, and we look so forward to your arrival.